This story takes place when I'm 12 years old, and it's Christmas afternoon. And you know how Christmas afternoon is. Presents are all open, all the excitement's over, everybody's just kind of in zombie land. And for us Catholics, it was even worse as a kid because we went to midnight mass the night before, so we hardly had any sleep.
Right.
But we still had one more thing we had to do that day. We were going to go to my grandma and grandpa Petrick's farm, and we were going to have Christmas dinner. And that wasn't too exciting. You know, grandparents are kind of old. They aren't very cool. They don't know what's going on very much. And my grandparents lived on a farm, and they were very poor. As a kid, you don't realize this, but they lived on this farmhouse that did not have indoor plumbing. For water, we had to go outside and crank on a cistern. There were no bathrooms. We had to take, when we stayed over, we had chamber pots in our bedrooms.
Yeah.
There was no central heating. There was a stove in the kitchen. The cook stove provided the heat for the kitchen. And then there was a pot-bellied stove in the living room and the dining room. But these were our favorite grandparents. We loved them because Grandpa was joking and teasing us, and Grandma always made this great food for us. So anyway, we're going to go see them, but we're not that excited except for maybe the food. You know, they're poor. All we're going to do is get socks and underwear, maybe at best.
Yeah.
So we head out, and we stop in the next town and pick up my other grandpa. And his wife had died that year, so this was his first Christmas by himself. And so we picked him up to take him to this dinner. This was my mom's dad, Grandpa Mark. And Grandpa Mark was a lot different than Grandpa Petrick. He was this immigrant success story. He had started his business, he had taken a lot of risks, he had expanded, and he ended up being a very well-off man. Again, as a kid, you don't know this, but I got to understand that later, that he had done okay. He wasn't urban rich, but for a small town businessman, he was doing very well. But we didn't really appreciate that grandpa or that grandma who had died during that year, because they were kind of different, you know. They talked with these funny accents. They had some of these old village ways that we didn't understand, and you know, we were Americans, and we wanted to be cool. We wanted to be the cool American kids, like an American Bandstand.
Yeah, right.
So, so we didn't appreciate these grandparents very much. Well, anyway, we pick up Grandpa Mark. We get out to the farm, and we get there, and there is this huge spread of food. This table is full of food, and the main course is a roast goose, like out of a Dickens story. And I'd never had a goose before, but I thought, wow, that looks pretty cool. And then I tasted it, and I didn't like it. But I was going to have to finish this goose because I could see all these beautiful desserts that were spread out all over the table. But I was going to get some of that. I was going to have to finish this goose. Well, as that was preoccupying me, my grandpa, Mark, was sitting right across the table from me. And Grandpa gets up and goes into the kitchen. You have to go through the kitchen to get out to the bathroom outside. And after a while, somebody notices, Grandpa, where's Grandpa? He's been gone for quite a while. And somebody goes into the kitchen and there's this yell or a scream or something, and Grandpa's help, Grandpa needs help. And so some adult somehow herds all of us kids into the living room. We can't go into the kitchen. We're not allowed in the kitchen. And I don't know what happened there. Apparently they found Grandpa on the floor and they were able to get him, put the back seat down on our station wagon. Of course, we had a station wagon back in those days, and got Grandpa into the station wagon. And I remember actually looking out the window and seeing the taillights and the station wagon going out. My dad was driving to the hospital at the nearest town, which is about 10 miles away. And we were in the living room and someone was taking care of us, and we were, kids. We didn't know what was going on. We just did what the adults told us. We were playing games and doing that sort of thing. And it couldn't have been very long, because even as a kid, it didn't seem like it was very long, that my mom and my dad came back and they said that Grandpa was dead. And that he was dead on arrival at the hospital. So I'm 12 years old and I didn't know what to do when someone dies, but I thought I was supposed to cry. So I forced myself to cry. And we had a little time of grieving. And then there were still these presents under the tree. The presents that my other grandparents had got us kids. And so we handed out the presents and everybody opened those presents. And again, I don't know what it was, nothing I remember. But then I noticed that there was still one present under the tree. And I went over and I picked it up. And it was a present to Grandpa from my mom for her dad. And I gave it to Mom. And Mom said, "You can open it." And I opened the present. And it was a pair of leather slippers, black leather slippers with red lining. And Mom said, "You can try them on." And I was always the biggest kid in my class, so I had adult-sized feet. And I tried these slippers on and they fit me perfectly. And Mom said, "You can keep them." And so that was the present from my grandpa Mark.
Wow.